flying. Now, there are factors that strengthen or weaken parties. There are intra-party factors, party institutionalization. Party institutionalization simply means a party gets established and acquires stability and value, all right? And in the context of political parties, there are certain criteria. Yes, CMD has been seeking to facilitate institutionalization of multi-party democracy. That is what it is attempting to do. Parties to get established. We'll get issues in due course. Social political support form in terms of key social cleavages in society. Party organizational structure and complexity, both spatially and organizationally. There are also contextual factors that weaken or strengthen parties. They relate to political and security environment. These are non-legal aspects. And there is the constitution and the legal environment, as well as the electoral systems. I won't have time to explain these various aspects because I've just been reminded. But I hope that they will come up during the discussion, okay? Parties can also be classified in Kenya to enhance understanding of party dimensions from different perspectives. The classification is purely for analytical purposes, right? And sometimes the types that come by are not mutually exclusive. You can find the same party belonging to different categories, okay? One criteria of classifying parties to determine how they can contribute to or weaken multi-party democracy is a stake in government. Yes, parties compete to gain power. Some win, they become ruling parties. Those that don't win, they become the opposition. And each side has its functional political utility. Being in government, you must deliver services to the public. Being in opposition, there's a role to play to keep the ruling party on toes and to propagate alternative agenda. Now, when you abandon your opposition role that has been assigned to you, you are doing disservice to multipartyism. It's a disservice to multipartyism, a disservice that is that should be treated as treasonable. Okay, Parliament already the leader of a majority in the Senate has already clarified, but that is where a party should seek representation if it's not able to secure power, because legislative business goes on, representation, budget approval, oversight, and it's also a platform to be had. So when you are missing in Parliament as a party, you are missing in action. The size, in terms of spread, spatially, there are large parties, smaller parties. Okay, large parties have more membership is multi-ethnic. Smaller parties, of course, they are the reverse. Another contextual factor, a factor for classification is the electoral system. Electoral system can be proportional representation or first past the post. Okay? When you use first past the post, it gives a different outcome as opposed to proportional representation. In a first past the post, usually winners take all. Only large parties emerge. But in proportional representation, you have a mix. Ideology can also be a basis to categorize parties. Ideology is a complex phenomenon, but it's about the outlook on how you wish to be the basis of your own principles, ideas, manifestos, and so forth. Some parties, as we have been told, they are more ethnic, Others, even if they wish to be ethnic, their arena of competition or social base is so narrow. It's no wonder some have been called village parties. You can't even claim the space for the ethnic group because you don't fit there. You don't even fit there, okay? You don't even fit there. You can't even say you represent whatever group you are. Now, coalitions. Here, I wish just to emphasize the positive aspects of coalitions, the enhanced inclusiveness, moderation of political polarization because everyone is enjoying the spoils or is being heard, enjoyment of small parties of disproportionate influence. They are punching, small parties are punching above their weights. Representation in government of social cleavages, and there's less antagonism between coalition parties and the others. But I wish to draw your attention to the negative impacts for political parties. And may I tell you, even if I stopped speaking at this particular juncture, that coalitions are dangerous for multipartyism. They weaken the ideological basis of political parties. It's just individual competing and negotiating. They compromise individual party platforms. Nobody hears party platforms of the individual parties. The electorate are denied the opportunity to choose from competing policy alternatives. A behemoth called whatever coalition, you don't know what it contains, and that is what it is. Okay. A recipe for unstable governments. We have witnessed it. People are quarreling over jobs, positions, money, and policies. They also weaken parties. The reason why they weaken parties is that instead of party officials spending much of their time to build their parties into institutions with widespread representation, they are just thinking of alliances. Now, why are you thinking of alliances when you should be building your own parties? That is a key question. Key issues that I wish to summarize from this particular discussion: continued existence of inactive parties, non-parliamentary parties, a high turnover and short shift life of major parties, weak organization structures and communication processes, poor enforcement of the laws relating to parties, flawed electoral system, expedient corruption of opposition into government, and deficient legal framework for coalition arrangements. The need to make the party system genuinely multi-party in practice, not a two-party system of Jubilee and ODM, absence of hegemonic party, lack of viable socio-political constituencies, weak party cohesion and loyalty, lack of explicit party ideologies. And may I say here, when you read the party document, they will say one thing. But when it comes to the actual practice and the behavior of political leaders, it is a different story, okay? Even the key party official may not even know what the party ideology is in that particular matter. Less democratic political and civic culture, and these ethnic identities. I think it has been clarified. Now, best practices, just 2 minutes and I wind up. Best practices are of two types: those that relate to improvement in the regulatory framework for parties in relation to those issues that I've already highlighted, that I've already identified. One, there is a need for a regular mechanism to provide for a legal mechanism to provide for a regular review of performance of parties in order to deregister inactive ones. If you don't participate in elections, why do you exist? That is the reason why you got registered. So if you don't, get deregistered because you have failed to participate in the elections. Public funding, this is a bit controversial from my own point of view. Resources are scarce. Not everyone can afford to benefit from political parties funding. Are there benefits of targeting the major parties so that they grow bigger, more institutionalized, or do you spread yourself thinly to the several parties that also need this particular share of resources? Another area that needs some review of the regulatory framework is an administrative mechanism that should actually do the policing of political parties. I know that is controversial, you will not like it, but let me say it, okay? In this particular case, you find parties are party constitutions, rules, regulations, platforms, but they don't follow them. They're just for PR. The way parties are behaving in relation to constitution is not what the constitutions provide. I have seen it in Tanzania. The registrar of political parties comes hard on parties when they deviate or they breach their own constitutions or the Political Parties Act, and they are called upon to account. You may wish to think about this, the office of the registrar of political parties, whether you can propose to get the requisite resources, manpower. If, for instance, Party X is deliberately not electing officials, they know what they do, how they reach to get their leaders, or they are not following their constitution, they are defying their own regulations, the registrar of political parties should be able to do a follow-up and reinforce and deal with these breaches. For now, he's handicapped. Maybe one person, one office. What can she do or what can he do unless it is strengthened? There is also a proposal that the office of the political parties, registrar of political parties, needs to be strengthened to give it more teeth. Instead of just complaining, you complain and bite. So it is not biting hard enough. The electoral system needs to be replaced, as you people have said. It's not just a question of strengthening the first past the post. You also need to change the electoral system so that there is a playing field where even political parties can thrive. Okay? The role of the official opposition should be entrenched in the Constitution so that people do not defect midstream to join the government and leaving a space that ought to be handled. I think by and large, these are the improvements with respect to regulation, improvement of the regulatory framework. There are also proposals about improving of the party system. I can see yes, he's just shy of telling me stop, but I appreciate it. You can see. I have already said it. The political market should determine the right number of parties. You can't say there should be 6. You can't say there should be 16. Let the people form parties, run according to the rules, ground rules, and if those ground rules say if you don't participate in elections, you are deregistered, so be it. The major political parties should be encouraged to be major political parties should be encouraged and supported to compete democratically to become dominant ones. Parties should also find their political bases. Key officials should provide leadership to deal with factionalism, which creates problems of cohesion. Parties should be encouraged to define their ideologies, not ethnicity. Ethnicity is for all of us. That doesn't make you unique. Say something different instead of saying this is a party for tribe X. And the danger is that kind of thinking, it undermines your ideology. If you are identified with a particular region, we listen to you, that you have a better ideology. They just see you as an X or a Luya party or a Jaluo party or whatever party. And secondly, you can't grow. Your growth is inhibited. You go to cost. If you are a Luo, say, chairman, you are a Jaluo. Okay? So, I think by and large, let me be fair to my
Thank
moderator.
You. A round of applause for him. Of course, you must also
If when we talk about getting rights today, people are constitutionally. So the democracy we're talking about must go back to the basics, is what we are doing. Have a reason to voice their concerns. Let's raise our concerns, because what we have is not working democracy.
You've taken the example of 3G. I know our legislation and station. If genuine, truthfully acquired results are announced at the point.
So there is democracy. The second aspect of our democracy is multi-party competition. Parties compete. Whatever it is worth, they compete. And so let us accept that there is democracy in a narrow sense, and it refers to electoral participation by both parties, political actors, candidates, and the voters. And the second aspect is that parties compete. That's the starting point, so that as we aspire to get better democracy or towards ideal democracy, you must begin from what is known, begin from the reality. You don't get demoralized. And that is a qualification I needed to raise. It may not have all the ingredients. We know what democracy is. It encompasses more than elections. It encompasses more than, the way they are conducted. It encompasses, say, freedom of association, freedom or the right to vote, the rule of law, and so forth. These aspects. Elsewhere, they are taken for granted. In some settings, you cannot take them for granted. But that's not to say that you don't have democracy. We have democracy, but in a qualified sense, in a narrow sense, electoral participation, as well as competition amongst the parties. Now, the other aspect that also needs to be qualified is political parties, or parties for that matter. When you go to Western party theory, the understanding is different. Parties can only exist in the context of democracy. Parties have grown side by side with the democratic movement in Europe. So, for them, a party cannot exist meaningfully outside the democratic context. When faced with the reality of outfits, parties like ours, they call them outfits with a semblance of political parties. Okay? And that can create problems in a discussion, in exchanges of this nature. It can create problems. So we have to be very clear. Yes, we may not have parties necessarily conjoined with the democratization process the way it is in Western Europe, but they are registered political parties, a group that represents certain interests, a group that aspires to win power. That would suffice. It would suffice for purposes of understanding. So they are political parties from my own understanding of the issues. Now, coming back to the outline, yes, those are the items I wish to cover. Now, there are, of course, registered political parties. In the year 2013, there were 59 of them, registered political parties. The source is both IEBC and the Registrar of Political Parties Office. In 2017, there were 68. The last time I checked in the office of the Registrar of Political Parties website, currently there are 71. The last one having been registered around June this year. Okay? This is the reality. Participation in elections both in 2017 and 2013, the number of registered parties, okay, the number of registered parties, 2017, 68, 2013, 59. Those that participated in the elections at various levels, whether at county level or national level, only 41%. That means there were, that is 60%. So 40% did not participate. There are parties that exist in the register of registrar political parties, but they don't participate in elections. So we must redefine their function, their functional utility collectively, okay? That was in 2017. If you tell them they get registered, you will engage yourself in a political warfare, okay? In 2013, out of the 59, 46 participated. That was a better performance. That is 78%. Now, I wish to give you food for thought as we go digging deeper into this data, all right? Levels of participation of active parties, the ones I've previously mentioned. Presidential elections in 2017, only 8 parties offered candidates. Only 8. Okay? There were so many. So this presidential race is out of their menu. That is just 22%. Only 22% are interested in the presidency. So why are you being registered if you don't want to rule the country? That is a basic question. In 2017, in the race for governorship, only 7 parties won variously. Only 7 parties won throughout the country. That is 17%, right? Parliamentary, the performance was a little bit better. 21 parties out of the very many that have been registered that were able to get at least 1 elected representative either in the National Assembly or the Senate. That is 51%. So just above 50%. So 49 were irrelevant, right? County assemblies, the playing ground was a bit level. So the 41 that were active in 2017 got at least 1 seat in the county assemblies. So that is the arena where the multipartyism is indeed taking place. Above, at higher levels, that is a preserve for very few. In 2013, the pattern is more or less the same. Presidential, 8 parties, 17.3%. Governorship, 13%. 13, only 28.2%. Participated. Parliamentary, 21 participated. That is just about 45.7%. Down at the county assemblies, they fared better, 100%. These are facts that we have to bear in mind as we think about the future. So in summary, to highlight the key features of our political parties, one can generally say fewer political parties are engaged in presidential and the race for governorship. The second is that as high as 60 to 70% of the registered parties were inconsequential in the electoral competition at the national level. 60 to 70%. Many of you are here, okay? Many of those that I'm talking about are here parliamentary, isn't it? And they also they have MCS, okay? As witnessed in 2017, Jubilee Party and Orange Democratic Movement were dominant in parliament and county assemblies. For instance, in 2017, the two parties had 71.1% of the seats of MPs, both in the Senate and National Assembly. Okay? When it came to county assemblies, the two parties, 63.6%. Two of them controlled the county assemblies. Now, this is of material relevance so that when we are talking about our multi-party democracy, in reality, it is a two-party system in the legislature. Yes, that is what it is. It only requires the two parties to connive, and the majority will become the minority in the political process. And that is where we must appreciate the dangers of handshake, okay? Yes, because once they agree, multipartism comes down to whatever percentage we may wish to conclude, okay? In 2013, a similar picture. Orange Democratic Movement and Jubilee Coalition, the two of them, they were, at that time it was a coalition of URP and TNA, controlled both parliament and the county assemblies. In the National Assembly or in parliament, they controlled 72.1%, and in the National Assembly, in Parliament, they controlled 72.1%. In the county assemblies, the two parties controlled 85.7%. When we are talking about multipartyism in Kenya, we must give it a qualified understanding. It is a multipartyism of two parties, right? I'm just going by data. I'm not creating it. We better have that understanding so that we can begin to resolve the issues that may arise. All right? So when Jubilee, for instance, party and ODM sit and agree, Parliament has already agreed. The rest of you just become passengers. All right? That's the reality. Now, another feature of our multipartyism is that neither of the dominant parties, that is ODM and Jubilee coalition, yes, Jubilee coalition were preponderant. No one party was hegemonic, so it couldn't call the shots or hold sway at both levels. That is unlike what you have seen in other regions. Say, CCM in Tanzania can hold sway and move its own legislative agenda. So is NRM in Uganda, RPF in Rwanda, ANC in South Africa, and many others, including Botswana. Here and Ethiopia, it's the same. Yeah? one hegemonic party, the ruling party. Sometimes it controls 99.9% of the seats in parliament. That is important, and to the extent that being hegemonic has some functional political utility, that is a deficiency we are suffering from. People may say maybe it is not desirable that we have hegemonic parties, but you all know that some of these hegemonic parties are the natural governments or natural parties of government, in the sense that they are prepared, they can mobilize, they can nurture leadership, they have institutions, and so forth, right? I have 7, I'm told, means are